All right. Thanks everybody for joining. If you guys didn't know, we host this official, unofficial like AI product monthly through Laney's newsletter. It just started with like us wanting to talk about evals really deep, like almost 2 years ago. We're now on meetup number 19. We've been meeting every month. So thanks for jumping on here. And, people are happy to get invited if it's people in the newsletter or not in the newsletter. So really everybody's like welcome. If you want to get added to the invite, just ping me on Slack or find me on LinkedIn and I'll add you to the invite. With that, there's been a few times where we record a conversation, and this is the rare times that we do. This is actually the third time we've ever recorded it, and we only record it if we say, "Hey, there's a set agenda," and we all say ahead of time, like we are okay with recording it. And this is one of the times where we got permission from Kevin and Daniel, who's gonna do the presentation to record. So I'll be sharing this out in the Slack community. I'll also probably post it on my YouTube. There's not a lot of subscribers on the YouTube. It's just like where I post it because like it's easy access for everybody. But that's where it's gonna be posted. So with that, Kevin, I'm gonna hand it over to you to share us your kind of learnings and playing around with the BMAD method. And before you go into it, you should probably tell us what the BMAD method stands for.
Yeah. Hey, folks, Kevin Holland. I am product leader specifically working in healthcare data. I've been in the healthcare space for 15 some odd years here in the US. Was a data engineer by training, naval officer prior to that. Been an operator, system thinker. Like I love regimented thinking, and that will probably show up for why I like this method. And how I'm a builder. And so I've been working with a large healthcare data product for the last several years, working with large EHR, like 36 million patients, try to think about as a systematic thinker and go into that. I'll actually also kick it over to Daniel to do a quick intro because he's just joined.
Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be here, everybody. And as Kevin and I were meeting and talking through this, we recognized we had a very similar background. I also have been involved in healthcare tech really my entire professional career. I grew up in a technology home. My dad was a partner in a consulting group that worked on packages like Lotus Notes. So I may be dating myself there. But got a computer science degree and have been bouncing back and forth between tech and business ever since. And I've been in product now for about 7 years and jumped into the AI product area in the past year or so. And as we know, it's been a real wild ride ever since then. So it's good to it's good to be part of this.
Yeah. So the BMAD method. So this is cordoned by an individual named is Brian Madison. He's a dev I've just got connected from. And again, Daniel and I are just opening up a, pun intended, an open source methodology that we stumbled upon. We are not affiliated officially with the team. I've led a little bit of contributions. I've like bought Brian a coffee. That's the extent. And so what we're doing here is we've stumbled into something that we think is pretty cool. We have the product management background. We're a part of this community. We said, hey, this is blowing our minds individually of actually connecting the dots with agentic flows and actually making agents make sense. So it's a palindrome. It's Brian's BMAD. It's his name. So it's a breakthrough methodology for agentic development. He just mushed it together and wanted to think up something. So not super clever, but I think what's really kind of valuable is one, it's great to have like cool open source tools, and it helps to address something that I kept seeing even when building projects. I've been a Claude user since kind of early day one. I've been testing out, I've been using transformer models and BERT models in my workspace for quite a long time for parsing through unstructured like clinical notes and extracting like symptomology values and used early knowledge graphs. So like this has been in the wheelhouse. Obviously, GPT like blew the doors off of me and everybody else working on the data science space. But we're using, a lot of these tools, and there's been methodology and workflows around thinking, memorization, RAG, all these concepts of maintaining context. And it just kept finding that working with these LLMs and the current interfaces, you'd spin up all this context for existing problem, and then it'd go away. And it's really tough to especially use any of these set items with a large enough context window or giving them enough knowledge of the overall space. There have been really good strides, I think, with the LLM providers. Wrappers have done a good job within that, but I hadn't seen kind of a core methodology around how to organize data and then weave that into using language models. Um, so we've spent a lot of hours doing this. There's a lot of lost knowledge. Unstructured inputs lead to unstructured outputs. Why the BMAD method? I'm going to kick this over to after this to Daniel. Why it kind of outperforms a few other things is we've seen some other autogen GPT items, fall a little bit short. They're designed for kind of autonomous thinking versus where I was finding a lot of value is treating LLMs in the last several years around building brains and teams using GPTs. I think those were a little overblown in the earlier context, but I think they are really valuable of stretching and putting together context for a frame of reference. I do the same thing with Claude projects, which is tie together a system prompt, have a set number of outputs, understand like how you can work with it as a teammate. Versus BMAD kind of allows for variable human engagement. You can let it build on its own based on initial context. You can work several items in. There's granular control for strategy. Some basics, structured context engineering is built into it with allows for flexibility. It's designed for like kind of human in the loop designs that allow for some of those items. And I think Daniel's going to talk through some items and show what that looks like in a GUI methodology. And then I'm going to close the loop of just a greenfield setup of like how to install BMAD. We'll go through it from an initial set point and we're going to do a little bit live. And again, this is supposed to be just like an intro and how we've started to use this within our PM world.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. And as Kevin mentioned, really, we're just practitioners here and absolutely love what this framework has done for us. I think the really one of the innovations here that Kevin mentioned is this kind of context engineered development, which, as we've probably all been hearing, this sort of context engineering, which is they're saying as important, if not more important, than prompt engineering, which has been something that I think the whole entire industry has been recognizing, and even in the tooling have been realizing that, and BMAT is really one of the leaders in that, and being able to kind of create a very good context in order for agents to progress in a development process or a project as a whole. And they interestingly do have a kind of a separation between like a greenfield and a brownfield process as well. So there's actually slightly different approaches there. But BMAT is really more than just a multi-agents, right? We have a number of different kind of multi-agent frameworks. Crew AI, AutoGen is Microsoft's one, and they're good for what they are. They're kind of and sort of an open toolkit that allows you to do whatever you want to. But really, BMAD is more than that. It's a methodology. It's a full process flow that includes multiple agents, but they work together in significant ways. And specifically around the software development and product management aspects. So they're geared specifically to the area that really we all work within. And you can see some of the agents that exist here. These are just some of the major ones, and each one can be engaged with separately, but they also are engaged with as a whole throughout the methodology or the process, going from ideation all the way through to creating very detailed PRDs, architecture documents, to epics and to stories. So it really covers the entire continuum, we'll say, of the documentation that we're used to looking at within products. So some of the main agents here, you've got the analyst that kind of starts out the whole process. It takes a look at asks you about your idea, and does some market research for you, and have some back and forth with you around your idea. Then comes in the PM, which is focused on kind of taking that initial idea and enhancing it into a PRD. There you go. Right. So there is in the documentation for BMAD, they actually do have a whole process flow that would encourage you to take a look at as you're getting into this. But yeah, so then once the PRD is created, it goes to the architect who then actually creates a full architecture diagram, architecture documentation with a whole bunch of really different diagrams and specs that get into the details of the architectural piece. The entire tech stack and everything, very detailed. And then one of the ones we don't have here is the UX expert, which if it's a front end effort, is if there's a UI associated with it, we have a UX expert that actually creates the front end specification. And from there, we have the Scrum Master, which is really, I think, one of the coolest agents here, which actually takes all of this information and takes the epics that are created as part of the documentation, and then creates individual story documents that are, again, hyper detailed, contains all the information that a dev agent would need in order to do what it needs to do, and as they say, stay on the rails, right, and actually accomplish what you want it to accomplish, as opposed to kind of giving it general instructions, which it almost never accomplishes the goal there, right? So this is just a really high level of some of the agents that are included in the BMAD kind of agent framework. If you go to the next slide, Kevin, there's a little bit more of this overall process. It really kind of matches a typical process flow that you might have in product, right? We do the problem exploration with typically the analyst agent. We would then do the strategic planning to create a PRD and some future prioritization there, and a number of other aspects that are involved with the PRD. Then do the technical validation with the architects, and then have the Scrum Master work to put all those plans into detailed stories, and then kind of working in tandem with the developer agent and QA agent to actually implement those. So it's a very tight it's a very tight kind of structure. And I'll just say for myself, when I first encountered this, John Connolly actually probably said it best. It's a mind-blowing experience when you first encounter this framework and see how high quality the documentation that comes out of it, and it's created within a matter of minutes, and it's documentation that me or my team would probably take hours or days, sometimes weeks to create. I was actually sharing BMAD with a design buddy of mine, and for the first time, and we were working like late into the night, like past midnight, on one of his ideas, and I had a sort of a paradigm shifting revelation that AI is just as good at core product management tasks as it is engineering tasks, right? There's been a lot of focus on, hey, how good can engineers, how good can AI, code? But really, it's just as good at product management tasks, which is certainly making me a bit nervous, right? And when you first think about it, like, is AI going to take all of our jobs, not just engineering jobs? But really, the kind of the glass half full side of it is hey, I can actually do so much more as a product manager with these tools than I could otherwise. It allows me to focus my energies on really the high leverage areas. And it's kind of similar to what Claire Vaux's talk and the Lenny's and Friends Summit last year. If any of you watched that, if you haven't, I'd encourage you to watch that. The title is "Product Management is Dead. So what are we doing instead?" Right? And essentially her core message is, in the new world where we have AI tools that don't just code, but they also can create PRDs and design documents and all these things. We'll have product managers that are very good at product, but also have the tools that they need in order to create good designs and also kind of dabble in prototypes and some development as well. So that's really kind of what I think the direction we're going in. And the BMAD framework is, in my mind, at least in my experience, the thing that actually has allowed me to get as far in that direction as I have. And it's, this may not be the thing to do in a year or two from now. I mean, things are moving so quickly, but for me, this is the current way to do this, really the optimized approach. And from the standpoint of kind of practical application here, you learn the foundations. There's some really good documentation out there. The first step in the process that I'll just kind of quickly go over with all of us in a somewhat of a live demo here is there's a web bundles agent, or I should say a suite of agents that you can pull right into a Gemini Gem or a custom GPT and engage with it directly, right? So you don't need to use your tokens in Claude Code to actually create the design documents, which is a really cool piece of the puzzle. From there, you define and iterate, right? It's the BMAT agents are actually working with you through this process of building the documentation that you're looking for. As we mentioned, it's a very engaging process, right? Some of these frameworks, as Kevin mentioned, are just completely hands off. Like you just give it, an idea. I want a recipe application, right? That giving it all the stuff that's in my fridge. Like there are some frameworks that do that and just run with it, but this is not one of those. It's a very high touch framework and process that in the end gets you very close to really what you wanted with again a very high level of quality and detail. So that's part of the iteration process. Then we execute and integrate, which you take the PRD and the other documents into your favorite IDE, Claude Code, Gemini CLI. I've used the BMAD method in those. Cursor is really my my go-to right now that I've been using to create a mobile app, a cross-platform mobile app from beginning to end with BMAD. So but there's a number of different ways that you can engage with this, and it's basically exists wherever you are, which is one of the great things about this. And then once you've gone through the execute and integrate, we've got this build and test, which involves the dev and the QA agent, and the context engineering piece is really one of the most important pieces and one of the most valuable pieces that the BMAD method brings in. And then the expand and customize. So the BMAD method is not just a kind of a closed set of agents. It's actually an extensible framework where you can create your own agents. And that's really where Kevin is going to kind of jump in here and kind of talk a little more about this. And Kevin, just for time wise, we can continue through this if you want, or kind of go into the live
No,
demo. It's your call.
jump over right after this. I'm going to pause here. We're going to do a little bit of break. Daniel's going to pull up a GUI and we're going to like walk through, I think, a Gemini gem, like how to spin that up, how to establish it with the web bundle, go over how he engaged with the analyst agent. Then I'm going to take that same brief, go into Cursor, create a project, load it up with a CLI. I think one thing I'm going to call out, like BMAT is great. I will say that the CLI tools really unlocked the methodology because it drives from documentation handoffs between other agents, and like that has completely unlocked it. And what you're also seeing here, John is mentioning of like, yeah, text is really rough or the concepts is really, additional methodologies. Well, I forked, you fork the repo, bring it local, create your own fork and match that to your own. And then I just told BMAD via Claude CLI GUI, reference the expansion pack, how to build your own, and build me one that matches my methodology. Read all my context that I have. Here's my LinkedIn post, here's my blog writing, here's the conceptual needs, here's my orientation. Use the analyst agent to describe what I wanted to do, what my concepts are. I went through that process of creating my own an expansion pack. And if you read in the methodology, there's a couple right now. They're like interesting. One's a build a 2D game of a phaser, but I now have 8 of them. I have one for my healthcare data product tooling. I have one for a product leadership methodology. I have one that's built for like healthcare um, uh, data products itself that is clinical representation. I have a lawyer's pack. I have a product market fit validation set of agents. Like this is wildly extensible because you already have a very solid baseline of how these conceptual agents work in a very tight and complex end-to-end workflow. All it has to do is take that overall concept of saying, here are the YAML files, which is all like that's what it is, YAML files on the back end per agent. This is what tasks look like. And it all comes back to like how well can you describe a workflow set of team members and teams that you have. And it already has the methodology to, well, I can load something in, and then when we install it, as you know, we'll see, I'll show you in cursor, all of my expansion packs are available right there. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, Dan, and we'll go through the individual expansion pack after this.
Sure,
But I think Daniel's going to jump into the GUI.
sure. Yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen here. Can you all see the BMAD? Let me see. Hold on. Can you all see the BMAD method
Yep.
document here? Okay, so I'm really just gonna start with just zero, right, and show you the on-ramp of just how easy this can be. So this is the main README. There are, like I said, there's really good documentation here, and it goes through some different cycles that provide you a high level view for. And I don't know if you're Kevin, you're going through this as well, but it's basically a one-line install if you're going to use it locally for your projects. But the easiest approach that Brian Madison recommends is this web UI full stack team. And basically he provides this file that is, I think it's about 10,000 lines of text, right? And this basically is an amalgamation of it's a subset of agents, but it's the agents that you need in order to fully work through the first set of documents, right? So it doesn't include the dev or the QA or the Scrum Master, but it contains, you know, really all the other agents that you need in order to get through this initial documentation process that he recommends. He recommends Gemini specifically just for the large context window, but you can of course, you know, do this with really any any LLM that receives or can utilize, you know, documentation or as knowledge. Now, what I think what he recommends is let me see here. Is putting it in knowledge. I'm just going to go ahead and put it, copy and paste this entire set of instructions here, and just call it, you know, BMAD full stack team. Okay, and then from there, you can just go ahead and start engaging with it. Right, so it's that easy to really get started with this, this is I think the way that if you're just kind of toying with it, do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and start with Flash just to give you a sense here of what the options are. I actually last night went through a whole process of engaging with the agents, so that and using 2.5 Pro, which actually takes a while to return. So I didn't really want to kind of go through a full live demo of that, just kind of having y'all wait for the AI to return. So I just did that last night. But here, this gives you an example of just the high level structure of these BMAD agents. It's similar to any other program, right? There's a number of different commands you can call. There's an agent command that allows you to actually move to one agent to another. This BMAD orchestrator is really an agent that is a specialized agent that allows you to orchestrate between agents and switch from one agent to another. The BMAD method contains not just agents, but also there's a specific set of tasks that are a part of it. So agents have specific tasks that they can accomplish, and checklists as well. And that is really part of the power of this. it creates a very mature process that, for example, there's an architecture checklist that the architecture agent looks at once they complete the architecture document, just to make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, right? And there's a number of those. There's also something called a workflow, and that's what we're going to take a look at here. There's a number of different types of workflow, and here they've got both, like I mentioned, brownfield and greenfield, and within that they have full stack. They have service oriented, and which is more like API based, and then UI and front end focused, right? So you got brownfield and then you got greenfield options, and each one of these workflows will essentially take you through a structured process, working through all these agents, asking you questions to help iterate on your design and moving all the way through to creating the PRD and architecture and such. These are some of the agents here that you can switch to, and I'll just kind of call out too. There's the variable approach of the human in the loop concept. It is great that you're able to have a very high touch, but there are cases too where you want to just say, all right, just do what you're going to do, and I want you to provide me the information that I think you're going to provide, and maybe you think it's good enough for whatever your needs are. There's a YOLO option that if you give that to the agent, it'll just simply do all of the work that is you've called it to do, as opposed to kind of iterating through and asking you questions. So those are some of the just kind of high level pieces here. I'm just going to dive into one example. Again, I did this just last night, and just to show you the way that that this starts out. So I did the greenfield full stack workflow. It starts with Mary as the business analyst. All of the agents are named, and I think John was pretty excited that they named the PM agent John. So we'll see that agent as well. And first, what Mary, the business analyst agent, says is, hey, we can do facilitate a brainstorming session. We can do deep research, right? And it can create a prompt for deep research. And then, or if not, we can go directly to the project brief, which is the output of the business analyst agent. It's essentially just a very high level document about the project. So just to, again, give you a sense of things, I'll just say, okay, I want to start with a brainstorming session, and Mary comes back with, okay, what are some of the main topic or questions that you want to brainstorm about? Any constraints, et cetera? What is your primary goal? Would you like me to create a structured document with the results of our session? Okay, and so I AI'd an idea for a project, and it was the AI-driven resume analyzer, right? I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there, but just for the sake of evaluation, this is what I suggested, and with a 6-month timeline, right? And wanted to have a focused ideation around brainstorming, and then there's a whole bunch of techniques that of brainstorming that are involved, or that you can choose from. I just recommended that the agent pick what is the best, right? And so we go from there. Two different brainstorming approaches, first principles thinking and the Scamper method, and it walks me through this first principles approach, right? So what is the most fundamental purpose of a resume? What job is it trying to do for the user? And I say a personal marketing document with the job of securing an interview, right? And then it asks the question, what is the fundamental purpose of a job description from the perspective of a company hiring, and what job is that trying to do, right? And then it attract talent, the right talent, repel the wrong talent, and act as a marketing tool and a qualification filter. And then from there, it says it kind of crystallizes the core aspect of this, right? So from a first principles standpoint, the single most essential action or event that must occur for this marketing key, the resume, to successfully pass through the qualification lock, right, is this. And I mentioned, okay, we have a direct pattern match between the resume and the content of the job description, right? So, and this is really a process of allowing us as a PM to really think through the ideas of, or kind of the concepts around our ideas, and fully vet it out. And then it goes into this different method, the scamper method. And at this point, maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm good with the brainstorm. Let's proceed with the next step. So whenever you want to, you can proceed. You can proceed as quickly as possible or as slow as you want, right? So I proceed with the research prompt, and there is then a huge number of options that the analyst provides you around what to research, right? And so, again, just very, very, a large number of options that BMAD kind of provides you, and causes you to think through, okay, which of these different aspects do I need to research, right? And so I just call out, okay, I wanted to user and customer research, and then from there, it goes into asking, okay, well, so what kind of research do we want to do? It actually recommends a proposed research objective and asks me if that matches my expectations. If it doesn't, I can adjust it. If it does, you say, yep, looks good. And then it has some further questions for me that shows what it's going to ultimately ask, right? So resume creation process, understanding the job description, current tools and behaviors, value proposition, validation, right? So those are all the questions that comes up with. I say, great, looks good. And then it goes into, okay, how do we want to, what's the sources that we want to pursue, analysis framework. And you can see there's a significant amount of thought that goes into this analyst, right? There's just a lot of background here. Kevin, sorry, I just noticed your hand up
Yeah.
there.
No, I mean, I think this is a perfect call out on the research side where it does depend a little bit on the GUI you're using and how it has either connections via MCP, Brave Search, what source materials does it have for something like this. So this is one thing of, for the core PRD, like it's not really depending on like external sources, but when I've gotten on the research side, it's like, okay, well, what first party research do I want to bring in? Do I have an a connection that from via MCP that I could, use CB Insights or some other third party option that does exist? Does it matter if I use Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Perplexity? Is Perplexity like pretty good at scraping? So that's one of the things of caution. Like when I've done the analyst side, as I hit to the research one, a part of it is how much context do I want to pull in outside of either my own head or wouldn't be just like core common knowledge. So that is definitely going to be a thought process you have. Like obviously BMAT is just using like an LLM and what it can call and structuring like what it does. It doesn't necessarily, it's not bringing in new knowledge of an industry you might have or new first party like sources or interviews you might have from users. So I found this once I've gotten to here, I parsed things out and said, okay, well, let's take the UX research analyst, and I dumped a set of interviews we had from some of our customers within an authorized set. And it's like apply this thinking and how you structure these items, but use this as a first party research as well as opposed to a third party. So that's always a way where you're playing with what's available. Again, in a structured process of how I also think of this. This is a team member, this is your analyst or your UX analyst telling them where do we even go find, or you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, and you do have the capability of adding additional documentation and research items, et cetera, directly into the whether it's here in a gem or of course in an IDE. One of the cool things about Gemini, and I'm actually not familiar with if GPT does this too, is you can give it a GitHub link, and it will have access to the entire code base if it's a project you've already created, and then you can engage with BMAD for and looking at the entire code base, right? So that's a pretty cool piece of the puzzle, and you really don't do any of this in a vacuum, right? As Kevin's highlighting here. So just a little more, and then we'll transition to actually creating the project brief. I highlight, all right, well, see, I want to focus more on online communities, right? And the rest looks good. And so then it comes up with a proposal of what the output is going to be, and then it actually gives me the prompt, right? So this is the prompt that I would then use in Gemini, or some other tool, Perplexity, that I would then use to gather additional information. Then you can pull that and kind of put that back into this process, right? So that's, again, just one example of the type of evaluation or kind of thought processes and such that you can kind of go through with the analyst agent. And moving on to the actual output of what the analyst agent is going to provide you by way of just kind of general documentation and what the PM would provide. There's this project brief, like I mentioned. One thing about BMAT is that there are a series of templates that the agents use to create these documents. So it's actually working off a set, a predefined set of sections, right? That is part of what enables this to be not just high quality, but also well structured. So this is just one example here in the project brief. So first of all, it starts with an executive summary, and this is one example here of the way that you can engage with the agent. For each one of these, it'll go through a number of different sections here, and it'll ask you, okay, do you want to validate against similar successful products? Do you want to stress test the assumptions? Do you want to expand? Do you want to explore alternative solutions? And I can kind of go through this a little more quickly here, but just to give you a sense, validating against similar successful products, right? So it talks through about some other existing products that are out there, validating the core concept, etc. Stress test the assumptions with edge cases, brings up a bunch of edge cases, right, that I might not have thought of. Exploring alternative solutions. Maybe we just do a Chrome extension, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be a web-based product. Maybe it's an API as a service where we don't build a user interface at all, right? Or maybe we use it as a product that a professional uses, a professional resume coach to as part of a very high touch service. So just kind of gets you thinking about different possibilities here as you progress. Then it goes into these other sections: the problem statement, then the proposed solution, and then the user segments, right? And then I say, okay, let me add another user segment. So we actually have a second user segment here. Sorry about all the scrolling here. Then it talks about goals and success metrics, business objectives, success criteria, KPIs. I mean, just a lot of really good high-level information that is essential for really any project that is going to succeed. MVP scope, core features. It calls out things that are out of scope. The MVP success criteria, and then I do some stress testing on it. Okay, well, resume uploads, right? What if the resume isn't high quality? What if we can't get images out of it? That type of thing, and then proceed to post MVP vision. And so at every one of these steps, you can engage more deeply or just proceed. And then let's see, technical considerations, and then okay, I'll just progress to the end here, just for the sake of time. This just shows you the kind of the depth of information here. If you did YOLO, this would just be created all at once, right? So um, so this is the final project brief. What you can do is then take this and bring it into Cursor if you want to, or you can continue with the, or or any other IDE, or continue with this process in in Gemini or ChatGPT to work with the PM agent to further solidify this um, and beyond. So, and this is kind of what I did here, but I think what Kevin's going to do is kind of show what that looks like in Cursor.
Yeah. I'm just going to call out, hey, in the interest of time, also address Shane's question. This is just the analyst agent running through in sequence a lot of different elicitations. And like from one prompt, you're just piecing it through and it's maintaining that context. It's answering an advanced elicitation. It also has loop backs to double down on context where it can expand and contract instances. At every point, every section, it asks like, what are some 9 things you want to do? Either just automatically move on to the next, dig in, stress test, do you want to cut the scope, etc. And you're definitely, this is very much human in the loop type of context. You can tell it to YOLO and like go build the whole thing itself just based on basic information. But even just the hand holding in a very reasonable way gets me just 100x better output than what I've seen from like Claude or anything else. So yeah, this is just one agent within that whole stack, the analyst agent that Daniel's working through, and then he's handing it off in the GUI. And I think Daniel, you'll highlight the brief.
Yeah, so the brief is kind of what we looked at of what's being passed off to so basically this is the entire product brief, right? It's however many sections here that were put together throughout this analyst process. And typically what I would do is get this out of the chat, right? Have it, give me a markdown, code block or whatever, and then put this into my project folder, and then start working with it, right? With the other agents. So yeah, this is the project brief. Kevin, I think you have this, and you're going to
Hmm.
start kind of working with the PM agent. So I'll go ahead and pass that off to you
Yeah.
to continue.
Yeah. So let's just assume we're going to actually show what it looks like in the IDE world and go like hey, let's kickstart an actual project. Let's bring things kind of to life. Wanted to spend time on the analyst side because honestly, that is one of the most valuable things. And I'm spinning up a product idea that I hope to have out over the weekend. I'm going to be probably spending my weekend on what if we wrapped the analyst in a viable GUI and like actually had that interaction that's dueling as stress test thinker. So, I mean, I'm already thinking of products off of this, and I can talk through a few other items here. But I'll go ahead and share my screen. So, what was provided? We had that brief as a markdown file that's available within my set item, has the executive summary, problem statement, everything else. I'm going to bring that into a folder that I have already called, job fit. So I'll just do manually, show me bring this in. I could obviously bring it into Cursor. And you see on the left-hand side here, I'll zoom it in. We'll open up this new project in and of itself. I'll and navigate over to project file. You'll see the markdown file that's here on the left. And again, I think the value of you can obviously do all of this in Terminal if you'd like. I have found, especially as a PM, working with written words, like using an IDE to be able to preview what that text is, what the context is. You can obviously do this all in Terminal from Claude or any other CLI tool. But we're going to go ahead and kind of kick this off. I'll also do a little markdown preview that exists here. So we'll be able to see what the project title is. We're going to run terminal within Cursor. And we're going to then do npx BMAD method install. So we're going to be installing the BMAD method repo and framework within this project base. So this is the full path for the project directory. Hit enter. And then you can see, I know it's going to be small. I can expand it a little bit. But because I have stacked and forked the BMAD method already, you see that there's a scrolling option to be able to spacebar select the types of components, the BMAD core, and then you have packs, and then you have Create Writing Studio. I created the healthcare data product one. I have a content creator and thought partner one. I have one for one of my existing products right now. I have a product market fit validation. I have a product leadership advisory. Think about how this is extending, and this is why my mind is still like kind of reeling for like how extensible the architecture is. Make an expansion pack for whatever the fuck you want. As you start to dig into it and think about what that weight of like what that actually looks like, and I'll happily show what some of these are, it's pretty big. It's pretty mind-blowing. So I'll jump into one of the ones that I have and I'll show you what that looks like. First thing you'll do, hey John, go for it.
Yeah, just like how do you fork GitHub?
Yeah, so I would
If
go,
you if you don't mind, if that's quick. Only
yeah. I mean, easiest thing is go to the GUI, have GitHub kind of installed on your desktop, go in the upper right of the repo itself and click fork this methodology that'll be brought in, and that can be then installed as part of a repo on your kind of own desktop and in your own environment. That then lets you make changes to the package and the methodology. You can obviously merge, you could merge those back or merge those changes back into the main branch. I wouldn't recommend. I mean, you're probably going to go do often different things, and then you can pull that branch as the changes come into place as they come forward. I know in version 5, Brian and some of the rest of the team are trying to wrap their heads around how these YAML files work with sub-agents and agents that were announced via Claude, like Claude announced 2 weeks ago of like, okay, they need to work together. I already have some calls within that. But happy to send you some links on like how to fork and some processes of doing that. I think that's the like advanced move is start to think about taking this as a base because it's open source, making it a bit your own, and the expansion pack methodology of how that goes in is really the next step of where you can take this. So we're going to shard the product, the PRD, as well as the architecture document. We want to break it apart, sharding, breaking apart. If you guys, everybody should know that. Say yes. And then you can pick. So the cool thing when I call out again, BMAD method is available for a bunch of different IDEs that are available. If you do Cursor, it's a fork of VS Code, so you should. I'm 90% sure. I'm surprised they don't have VS Code, but they have GitHub Copilot, Windsurf, Tray, Clio, CLI. So I'm going to do Cursor and Claude Code just to show what the configurations and those config files like allow it to be called within the CLI tool. So it allows the CLI, the command line interface, to know that, hey, this thing exists, BMAD exists, and I can use references from that. I don't want to include the pre-built bundles because we're past that method. Great. Here's all the installs, some dependencies, not found. None of these are critical. Created agents commands. It also created the agents specific to my item that exists there. And now within that, you can see up in the upper right, here's the core. So everything that's in that repo is available here now. You'll be able to see all the agents that exist. So for instance, here is Mary. This is our friend that was really kind and worked through all the items. Here are core principles, all in a markdown file with markup language. Her specific commands are defined here, the data that she used, the tasks she's referred to, the templates that she has. So all of this is here, and via the YAML wrapper within this, they are referring back to components. So each of these agents are referring to checklists. Each of the checklists is referring to source data on BMAD. Each of the templates are used within a task. So you have a brownfield architecture. This is how brownfield can go. And so John, like You fork it and you say, I notice that this issue happens all the time because when I apply to a new product, why don't we use the tool to make the tool better? So that's one thing I did do is noticing that, hey, within brownfield projects, I want you to break down our existing files, do root source documentation, and I want to make sure that you pass through and keep context of the ED documents or the expert determination and data methodology document that we have for my specific product. So I changed the brownfield methodology for my own product files because I know it failed at this specific issue. So we're able to change that YAML file to make sure it applies in that way. So let's go ahead and kick off Claude and make sure I have the reference. Oh, let me go to second desktop. I think it is shard. Yep, shard doc. And I'm going to go ahead and close everything out. I'm going to drag in that brief. Love that just rediscovery of that thing that I forgot that VS Code could do is being able to drag folder references instead of having to do like CD file searches. So now Cloud Code's going to kick off. And what it's doing is using the M markdown tree command, which it installs. It explodes the brief into smaller file sections that are more easily parsable. So now you have context within our docs file. You now have a section on executive summary and problem statement and a name and with which in that. So the core development group knows, hey, I need to go look at this file if I want to maintain context, and I'm going to update this in one place. And the thing that we see, like most agents or LLMs, is you start to get lost. You either provide too much context all in one threaded window, or you can't reference secondary files. Like the beauty of the BMAD method and any other reference type of methodology around files in itself is if you're organized and thoughtful, like this method kind of is, you can have agents at different points in time point back and find those references. So then the next thing I think is going to be SM, right? And then was it create new story? I think I got that right. Let's see. Yeah, we have create doc, tasks, and with hashtag ref, you can see all the subcomponents within that. All right. And so it's using the task tool in itself from Claude to assign that, and then using the contextual stories within the search pattern story in and of itself to find those markdown files, and we'll start to generate that. Okay, so yep, hash, start to create those, starts to create the stories brief and the context. It'll start booping in that way and get going. Okay, here we go. Story mark 1. So here's your first story. I think Daniel, let me run this. Didn't quite get the create next story. Huh, that's why. New versus next. We'll see how this goes. Yep, there we go. All right. Called the config file in the right way because it didn't recognize the command. Again, there's a little bit of clunkiness, like it ain't perfect, but it's damn good within the stories in and of itself. Delete that one. You're still building, so you still get engaged, and we'll be able to drop within this context. On the backside, I'll show some of my other markdown files. So like, hey, here's my creator context. You see on the right, I have a LinkedIn writer. Great, here you go. Here's their role. Here's their core principles. Hook or die. First line determines everything in being a LinkedIn wanker. Here's the formula, hook, rehook, body, context within that. Here are your dependencies, create viral hook MD. Here's your LinkedIn post framework. Here are other commands within that. Here's my writing principles. So for my own data, here are my core writing philosophies from both analyzing and reviewing and writing this myself. This is how I write. This is how I want to be represented. So now I have an expansion pack, John. You said, hey, this doesn't sound like me, or this is very generic. Well, I have a writing principles markdown file that has a good sense of my own voice, and I can keep this updated and keep it updated in a very specific way. Do the same thing with a product leadership. So I got a whole product coach, Marty Kagan in a box. In terms of this context that exists here, customer discovery of requirements, assess your maturity, do a full maturity assessment, which I then used to create a product that I'll show everybody here in some context overall. So there we go. Happy to click through that. Like I used the BMAD method, and I know we're at time to like fully create this PM assessment tool. This was all the PM like assessment, this entire view, as well as the backend with Supabase with secondary items. I migrated from, tried first with Lovable, didn't like how clunky it was, then had industry matches and context, bringing everything in, and that's entirely from the BMAD method. So I know we're a little over, Daniel. I'll kick it over to you. Is there anything I missed, or do we want to spend some time talking?
No, I think this is really good. We've gone over the basics and given folks just kind of a sense of the framework. We may have some questions here, so I did want to provide some time for that as well for folks who are able to stick on. Yeah, we do have some resources as well that we, actually Kevin put together the notebook LM thing, which is great, and his product blog, the BMAD YouTube channel is fantastic as well as as you're really planning to kind of get into BMAD method.
Hey, Nick, go for it.
Are we
Go for
are we doing a few minutes for Q&A, or I know we're out of time? Cool. Tactical question, but I'm curious within the brownfield setup if y'all have worked on or if they have like an agent out of the box that's specific around like UX review, like to have a step that's like assessing the existing UX of a product or feature, and then having that be part of the context for like iterating on an existing feature.
Yeah. So they do. They had a UX expert, like kind of right there. One recommendation, 100% recommend installing the Playwright MCP. So Claude needs eyes. Claude's like inherently, this is Claude specific. Now, if you run with Gemini CLI and like has other functionality for navigation through some of these tools, and you're trying to say, does this button placement spatially make sense? Some of these LMs are not going to fully get that. So I'd been testing over the last couple days, making sure my project had a couple MCPs loaded in, and that the agents also knew when to call some of those. So I was thinking from, context 7, definitely bring that one in for certain use types. Playwright MCP I've found to be very solid and reliable and a great tool to like give browser elements a few different eyes, especially as you're doing even works with like local host kind of deployments on the brownfield side. But there's already a solid UX expert that like has create doc, checklist, generate front end kind of prompt and items within that. And there's some like UI tools within it too.
Cool.
But yes, Shane, you can definitely install on an existing repo, just npx BMAD method install. Now, be careful. I don't know whose repo that is, what company that is, how comfortable you feel. I think somebody asked, like, how's your engineers felt about it? Depends on how comfortable that engineer is on generative AI and their tooling. Some I work with are like all about it, some hate it. I'd said I was very open of saying I am using this for some de-identified like brownfield development and for like greenfield new project development. Like I'm using this to like help me build out my brief and will help to give like architecture thoughts. And I usually dumb down some of those architecture decisions depending on the engineer. So It classically depends on your organization and the engineer, how comfortable they are. I also don't really, again, I'm just a practitioner using the overall tool. I will say all of the context here is just YAML and Markdown files. Like the config stuff is pretty portioned off. Like I'm not seeing any injection issues. There's no security issues. It's pretty bare bones. Like this isn't a wildly crazy repo or technical thing. So it really depends on the team. Oh, sweet. Thanks, John. Also good to have other people validate that. Yeah, MCP is definitely another story. Um, John, I actually want to give the floor to you on like what your experience has been with this platform
Well,
because you've been pretty vocal on like testing it out and sharing some like lessons learned with folks here.
yeah. So it was a really busy week in general. It was the hackathon week. There was a lot going on. Um, it I'd used it briefly on like Friday evening for about 2 hours, doing my own trying to get out of my head of this personal project I was doing, and it went really well. I got as far as the first section of the PRD, and that was kind of like, wow, okay, cool. But then with the hackathon, we did a Slack bot, pretty ambitious Slack bot to be fair. That was it would, you know, you could tag it on your Slack channel. It comes in, you give it documentation, creates a knowledge base, and then
Mm,
you can chat to it in Slack, listen to it or tag it, whatever. So it made it, but what was really useful was the transcript aspect, and Whisper was brilliant. So that was for myself.
mm,
Um, Made it difficult actually when the team were like, "Who are you talking? Am I talking to them?" Or that was a very common problem towards the end of the week.
mm,
But tailing Zoom transcripts was really handy. So if you have transcripts on Zoom, you can get the button at the bottom now and open it in either Sublime or like Notepad++. And anytime you hit
mm,
save transcript, it goes and just jumps to the whatever part is next. So you can just select that next part and send that into
mm.
Claude whenever your team discusses like the architectural diagram or something.
And
And
did
then
you
you just
just
get up.
have Zoom kind of like on the background? You had like a
Just
meeting just
that, just
helping you.
Sublime. So I had the small little save transcript button on the left, and then Sublime was
Mm.
behind it. So
But you had a
anytime I
Zoom
was like,
meeting kind of like just
yeah,
going
yeah, yeah,
on.
we were all on for an hour in the morning,
Mm,
every morning, and it was talking through like what's the plan for the day, um, like where did we spent maybe 2 hours at the brief slash PRD on Monday, and that was great. We had like I got one of the architects to jump on for half an hour on Tuesday morning just to kind of give it a going over, and then he showed me like the system repo we have in Toast, where they explain like the architecture we should use and stuff like that, and gave it that, and it just like rewrote half of the architectural guide based on that.
mm,
And as we were talking to like my QA, she said we don't use that, we use a different thing. Drop that transcript in, and you can see it updating as you go. And then you're like, okay, we're happy with this half of the doc now. Move on. And it was just like an hour, and you had your whole architectural diagram, like agreement from everybody on the call because they were all discussing it
mm,
live. So like committing after every change. So then you only
mm.
saw the part was changed, so you could scroll down to it real quick or whatever doc was changed.
Yeah.
Uh, it like so we created loads really quickly, and then I was trying loads of different stuff while they were using the developer agents to actually build the stuff.
Mm,
So it was nice they were coming back showing me new features like every morning, and I was like, oh shit, you managed to get that done. Like these, you don't move that quickly.
mm,
Usually in any company I've worked at.
yeah.
And the side projects I think is where it's going to get the most for me because that was building. They still had the same problems. Like it's going to require a big refactor. We move quickly. We're not going to be able to maintain that pace. Like we'll burn out very fast if we have to try and keep up with that and deliver so much. Fixing loads and then production issues. Like it's great that way. But from a discovery aspect, the agent now, I'm immediately going to create all of I have like 25 different agents spread over all of the different GPT tools.
Mm,
But like an example is personas. This is a big thing that's stuck in my head now the last couple of days. So I sat on a call with one of my stakeholders who made a flippant comment last week they weren't getting anything from the hackathon, but more projects that fed into their workload. So it's like, okay, they're already got loads of stakeholder issues. They have loads of workarounds, manual steps, hundreds of them. And they're like giving out that AI is not really doing what AI said it was going to do for ops teams and stuff. So I was like, okay, let's sit down for half an hour. We did a chat to the analyst. I gave it their Confluence base, their I have an exporter thing that just exports keywords from Jira and Confluence into an MD file. So it dropped in all their names, the name of their team, the name that their personas go by, whatever, on tickets, given win-ins and stuff. And then just got it to fill up the brief, got it to fill up the PRD. We're trying to fix some of their problems without engineering. That was the kind of goal. I was like, what can we do without having to involve engineering effort? Because I don't have any spare engineers. So it's like, okay, grand. And then just the brief was insane. Like the detail that it sucked out of Jira and Confluence about everything that they were involved in ever, and broken down into a perfectly formatted like template. And then like a template, and then I made an appendix, but that's where I struggled because I didn't use kept forgetting to update the appendix because I didn't update the YAML files to remember the appendix. So that's need to do that. But like that gave another template I asked it for, and then I've sent that out now to two of the other stakeholder teams that I support to get them to talk through the template on a half an hour Zoom meeting, send me the transcript. And whenever you do that, I'm going to go back in and give it, here's the new stakeholder, here's their Confluence page. And maybe try and create some sort of a persona like monolith or something.
Cool.
So like if we're creating a new project in Jira Discovery, you tag that initiative for that persona name, connect to the repo that shows all of the persona shit, and then you know who you need to contact. All of the user stories they do, don't break any of those, Yeah. So
there's lots of different splintering within that.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating set of stories, and you've also, one, applied valuable from a dev team, two, directly from you as a side hustle items you're identifying from an ops perspective, and fitting with the mess of additional tooling and where context is stored, helping to define existing templates within teams, getting reactions. So I mean, I still constantly am feeling like I'm scratching the surface and starting to figure out how did the edges of this thinking start to weave into parts of my work. It's never going to replace all of it. The tough thing is again, why do 95% of these AI projects fail? Because it's not drop and replace. You have to understand a workflow. You have to know how people work. You have to understand that context. And that's still true. This is just the first time I've seen agents broadly make some sense within and have a ton of extensibility within a writing perspective, and one that's somewhat approachable, that's not locked in, N8N or Zapier secondary flows or secondary files that I think are that's nice. I'm not going to spend days stitching together kind of clunky pattern flow files that might not actually work. So Michelle.
Can I just check my understanding by comparing it to a manual workflow and then just compare to what you've just showed us here, just so that I know I'm on track? Okay, so manually, very simply, I would I'd create, for example, a Claude.ai project. I'd create one chat, and that would be about all my exploring, researching, etc. It will be back and forth questions, and then I'd ask it to summarize the whole conversation into a markdown file, and I would copy that and place it into my next chat. Then with my next chat, I would go through the whole PM process of making a PRD, and then from there I'd copy that, get it to summarize it, copy it, put it into a new chat, and then go through the whole process of architect, what architecture can we use, what technologies, and then from there, break it down in little chunks of work and send it into linear. If I compare it to what you've shown, and this is the part I'm asking about, are you making it easier for me in that basically you've got a whole set of well-structured prompts. So there's a whole lot less writing that I need to do. It's really interactive, so I can just answer questions back and forth based on my answers. I can easily edit the documents that are created before taking them over into the next process. That's it.
Yeah, that is at the core it, which is you already have a guided like product development full SDLC cycle
Okay.
with pre-developed templates and prompts for each team member, as well as an understanding of who hands off what to what person, and the expectation that each one of those elements ends with writing something down.
Okay. Okay. So then um, for me, I would use it in Claude Code for sure within either VS Code or Cursor. But then basically what we're producing is a set of documents. And if something changes, I'll just have to ripple that change through all the documents again, right?
It will do it yourself. I mean, like there's some of that which is going back to either Scrum Master or the orchestrator of saying like, hey, I've changed this fundamental thing. Make sure you do these handoffs, update the implementation process, or updating the overall brief.
Okay, sure. That's great. Thank you.
There's a PO agent that does a checklist as well. So you just get him to run the master checklist and he checks everything. Well, you can do it a few times to make sure he catches everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and one last question, 'cause I never heard this mentioned, but I'm not quite sure what, I think you said it was an expandable, and I wasn't sure what expandable means, but for my specific question is, I've got a lot of customer feedback, like complaints and queries, and so a whole mass of data. Is that an expandable that I could create, analyze all of this data, give me the main themes, and then ripple it through my product?
So I think that's a part of it. Think of one, the existing agents would probably be well suited for that. So you have like a UX or a PM with like you just point that PM already at the data. So there's probably the agent that exists. But when we're talking about the expansion packs, this is Brian and the team thought of like, well, software development lifecycle is like a very specific way of things to do. But what about if you have a marketing team? Start with say a PMM, and then you have a content editor, and you have a editor within the team, and you have a social strategist, and you have a content lead, and you have a VP of strategy. How do they share content, item and work, and go through checklists and execute things from one to another and hand that off? This is like a creative writing, which is that team looks a lot different than a software, a product team with engineers, with UX, UI, with a PM. But inherently, information goes, an idea starts in one place and a finished work product goes out the other. Like it's kind of a workflow within that. So the expansion packs just allow for the idea of you can load each of these in and customize it. You can fork this repo, create your own, and load them in with your own definitions of who's on that team, what knowledge they need to have, what their knowledge base already is, and how you move that forward. So like I have an expansion pack for like my main full-time product where I have publicly available contextual information on what my product is, what the reporting items are, what our ICP is, what some of our primary clients are, use cases that are available. I have specific teams that are slightly different than the SDLC cycle. So it just allows, again, for that extensibility. And I'm barely thinking through all the implications because we're not even talking through, well, you could add custom API calls. Say, what if you added like REST API information for some of those agents or MCPs where they could interact in certain ways? Like it is just code. Like it's code.
Yeah.
So like you can do a lot with it. This is just a framework to add on top of it. They're all YAML files. They're strung together. So the core team will work just in that process you have, which is you kick things off. There's a lot of handoffs and writing docs. And then I think the expansion packs are something that really hasn't been fully explored and just has a billion different potential directions to go, depending on how articulate you are, how you structure it, how you connect it to other tools, and like how customized you make it for a workflow and a team you see.
Okay, so in summary, really the value of all of this, which I totally missed, and correct me, but it's like a spider. It's a centralized hub for people to collaborate with structured workflow, and it all comes to the center. And the most important part is basically taking the need and popping it out into little pieces of deliverable work.
Yes,
That's
and
really great.
giving deterministic structure at non-deterministic points in time. So I'm using
Perfect.
like LLM language. Like LLMs are great because it can kind of like output anything, but the issue is it doesn't know what you expect and what you need. And this is like saying at this point in time, this is what I want out of it. So okay, go generate all the content that's relevant there. Now, next deterministic output, use the context from the previous one go then do a probabilistic method and stitching those together just as that web you would say. And I like your spider methodology. I think that's a good analogy.
Oh, okay. Thanks very much. That's great.
Folks, that was super. I gotta drop this late here, but yeah, I'll I shall update you with my expansion packs.
Yeah, I expect
Thanks for
expansion
jumping on, Kevin.
packs and analyst stuff to be going on. Sunny, I'll leave it to you.
Thanks everyone for joining. I have not done anything with expansion packs or creating my own expansion packs as well. So that is definitely a space that I definitely need to explore. Um, yeah, I definitely recommend just doing the planning workflow like what Daniel was showing in the beginning with your web UI of choice, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, and just like constantly like directing it and feeding it the context to kind of uh, get the documents that you need. The kind of like perspective definitely that I have is kind of consistent with like what Kevin and Daniel were talking about is the AI doesn't know what context it's missing. It's up to you to provide that context and like direct it and like is the output actually good, right? Like I am not an engineer, so do not know if any of its coding output is actually good, but I've worked as a PM, so I know if its PM output and its design output is really good. And so when Connor, or not Connor, when John was talking about, hey, like working with engineers and the engineers and the architects are reviewing the output of like the architecture document and providing the context that it's missing. I was like, oh yeah, this is super cool, super powerful. I could not do the whole BMAD method in my current team because I'm not an engineer. I don't know what context is missing. I don't know if its output is good, but I can do is the context correct? Is it missing context? Is the output good on the product side, right? So I've constantly had that on top of my head is like LLMs are only good if you know what context is missing and you can provide it, and if you're good at reviewing if the output is actually good. And I am not good at reviewing code output like at all. All right. Thanks y'all for joining. I'm sure we'll talk more about BMAD method in the in the Slack community. I'll
Yeah.
post the recording of this call in the Slack community and also email it out. And then I think Kevin and Daniel, I think you're okay with the
I'll help to share some other resources to you, Sunny.
perfect.
And you can move those across. That'd be helpful.
Sounds good. Thank you all for joining. Talk to you all later.